Welcome back to Dark Souls 2. My name is Tom, and in this episode we are continuing on with the Earthen Peak. But you should prepare yourself for quite an opinionated episode, because we have to talk about some touchy lore topics that Gilligan the Laddersmith brings up in his dialogue. Also, with these mannequins, if you fight them in the area before here, one of them will run past the gate, pull the lever, and then close the gate on you, forcing you to take the long way around. But if you run past them through the gate before they get a chance to do so, then you can basically skip an entire half of the area, which is pretty freaking good, because that area, it doesn't take a long time to get through, but it's just a pain in the ass having to climb up the ladder, go through it, go through all these desert sorceresses and the grave wardens, just to get back here anyway. And the item on that body over there to the back is the mannequin mask, which we are going to pick up right now. And I was just looking behind that wall, because usually there is a mannequin behind that wall, or at least there was in Dark Souls 2, but it turns out he's up there now. So I was kind of just looking for him, and it turns out he was above me. And I was just trying to get him to jump down, and it turns out he ended up taking the ladder for some reason. I don't know why. He probably just should have jumped down on me. That would have made more sense. And I think those mannequins with the giant knives on their hands, they weren't in Dark Souls 2, the original. I think they're a new version of the mannequins. Usually the mannequins just had their shields and their, I think their curved blades, the mannequin saber. But it seems as if they have added those new knife mannequins as a new form of enemy. Now, just quickly before I go on with this and talk about some stuff from last episode, we're about to get some important dialogue from Gilligan on Mytha and the Old Iron King.
Shush, I'm on the... You're a fugitive too, eh? Yeah? Why else would you be here? It's got death written all over it. You want to climb down here? I can lend you a ladder. But, how much can you offer me? Why, yep, I'm trying to help you, you know? Have you no gratitude? Downright rude, really. I've got a soft heart, so I let you off this once. All right, it'll be just a moment. Go on ahead. I won't offer this deal twice. Oh, what is it? What do you need now? Huh? Psst. Have you heard? Well, apparently, there's this monster lady, right? And the poison, well, does wonders for her body. You know, health and beauty and that sort of stuff. And I thought only human women were so petty. That creature, she was human once, you know? Yeah. In fact, she was wed to the prince of that nearby castle. But her husband? He had feelings for another. The princess was desperate and sought eternal beauty, hoping that it would restore the prince's affection. You see what I mean? Before long, the princess's ire transformed her into a monster. Now, listen here. When do you think this all happened? Long ago, when this very land was called something else. We say Drangleic now, but countless kingdoms have risen and fallen on this very spot. And this won't be the last. Oh no. That damned hag just can't let her old flame go. She's going to get us all burned. God almighty. I'm not going to die in this dump. God's all. I'm... Fine then. All the best.
So, we just got some very interesting information on both the Old Iron King and Mytha just then. Mainly that the Old Iron King and Mytha were once wed to be married, but the Old Iron King, as stated in the last episode, had feelings for another, and Mytha, her feelings were unrequited towards the king, or rather the prince as he was at that moment. And Gilligan also restates what strayed Will later on, as well as a few other NPCs in the game, that this land that is now called Drang Lake was not always called that. Gilligan states that countless kingdoms have risen and fallen on this very spot. And as we know, the theme, or one of the main themes of the Dark Souls series, is death and rebirth. The flame will fade, the dark will come, and then from the embers the flame will reignite, thus ushering in a new age of fire. But this is the cycle that repeats and repeats again, and in this respect, Drang Lake and the kingdoms that are built on top of it, they're in the same vein. A kingdom will fall, and then a new kingdom will rise, just as the flame will fade, and then be reignited. The way that I see this is like, every time there is a new kingdom, you could think of it as a new cycle. So maybe every time the flame fades and then gets reignited, such a big period of time goes past that the kingdom that was around during the fading of the flame is now known as something else during the reignition. And this elevator just takes us up to get the mirror shield, which is actually quite a nice shield if you do use those. And it's another thing that gives us a bit of lore about Lucatiel and Mirror, but we'll talk about that later. For now, we'll get back to talking about these kind of ideas and prospects about Gilligan's dialogue. Now, we can talk for ages and ages. I could make this whole video about a theory to do with Drang Lake and Lordran. And don't get me wrong, I'm completely open-minded for it either being Lordran or not Lordran, but it's hard to argue against it not being Lordran because there are so many facts that point towards it. Now here's Pate again.
Well, we meet again. There's treasure this way, but I have a bad feeling about it. I don't quite have the guts myself. Well, we meet again. There's treasure this way, but I have a bad feeling. I don't quite...
Good guy Pate here is actually telling us where the treasure is, but he also warns us that the treasure may be not so easy to get to as well. This is the differentiation between him and Creighton. Creighton is just kind of a vagabond and a brigand that will go find treasure and then probably kill anyone that tries to take it from him. And I suppose Pate saw that as well and kind of ditched him because of that. I mean, I probably wouldn't trust Creighton either if I was in Pate's situation. Anyway, back to just talking a bit about Gilligan's dialogue. So Gilligan stated things about the countless kingdoms that have risen and fallen on this land, and that Drang Lake is not its only name. Now, I don't want to spend too much longer on this subject because we do still have to talk a bit about Mytha and the Old Iron King, but I just want to cover a few things quickly. Now, people that talk about and only use the interview of 2012 with the developers of Dark Souls 2 as their bargaining chip for proof that Dark Souls 2's Drang Lake is not connected to Lordran, that point and that interview are pretty much mute by now, because you cannot even fathom, unless you work in game development or you are a game designer listening to this, how much a game changes in that 2 years. They probably started off thinking that they didn't want Dark Souls 2 to have anything to do with Dark Souls 1 in the way of lore, because this dev team for Dark Souls 2 probably didn't want to sully Dark Souls 1's lore, and they probably wanted to make Dark Souls 2 its own independent Dark Souls game with its own lore. And that probably would have given this new development team a chance to prove their worth working on their own Dark Souls title. But in the end, Miyazaki was the supervisor, so he probably came to them with the idea of having a long-running series of Dark Souls, the series of Dark Souls, because now with Dark Souls 3 coming out, he says that he wants to move beyond even the third title in the series. Therefore, he wants the story to keep going throughout all the titles. They probably started in Dark Souls 2 thinking that they didn't want to carry on the sequelization of the series for much longer, and then Miyazaki probably said, no, I want to create a series out of this and do more with it. So So find a way to link it to Dark Souls 1. While Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 1 don't completely share the same lore, it would be kind of ridiculous if they didn't share anything at all. Now, this is probably the thought behind why they had to add in so many things from Dark Souls 1, just to make the games feel more interconnected. I'm still not saying that one of these theories is correct over the other, but logically speaking, it makes more sense for Drangleic to be in the place of where Lordran was than anything else, or rather, than it not being in that place. Now, it could be possible that in the Dark Souls series we are just going to all different continents around the world that Dark Souls takes place in, but they go to so many lengths in Dark Souls 2 to explain that countless kingdoms have risen and fallen on this spot, that it is so hard to think that they don't intend it to mean Lordran. There was actually someone that commented on the trailer analysis video of Dark Souls 3, I believe, that was trying to tell me, or was trying to tell the general populace, I suppose. He was trying to argue why people still think that Dark Souls 2's Drangleic is in the place of Lordran, and they were even going to the lengths as to make up false facts to prove their point. This is what annoys me the most when people talk about this touchy subject. People that are so adamant on one side or the other will actually go to the lengths to make up false accusations about, or false facts about one side. And it really annoys me because I'm just someone that sits on the fence for this. Even though I do kind of sound like I have a bias towards thinking it is Drangleic is Lordran, I do actually fully support the side that thinks it isn't either, because I can see it from their viewpoint. I can see how they just think the world, I can see how they believe the developers. But once again, I'll restate that that interview took place before the game was even finalized. And the Dark Souls games can also be a little misleading at times. And while it's all fun and games, it does create internal turmoil within the community sometimes. And an example of that turmoil is the people that try to use false facts to prove their points because they get so opinionated and defensive about a fictional game. I think the false fact that they tried to use was saying that there is dialogue in the game that states that the Lord vessel that is in the basement of Majula was actually brought from a distant land. And as someone that has scoured the Dark Souls 2 dialogue looking for this already, the Lord vessel is never once mentioned in this game at all. It is literally only in the basement of Majula, and it is only seen there and discussed there. Well, it isn't even discussed, it's never heard in dialogue, but it is there nonetheless. And this person tried to use fake dialogue to prove their point, which is, it gets really annoying when you have to deal with that sort of stuff, because then you have to go, well, as someone that makes this sort of content, I have to go looking for it, and I have to actually find that it is not true to be able to refute their point. And I'm happy that everyone has their own theories on this game, and that there are so many, but when those people decide they need to lie to prove their theories and opinions, it discredits them all the more. Now, I'm just going to cut this off now because I'm afraid I'm going to get a little too salty when talking about this stuff, and I don't want to do that because we have a bit more to talk about to do with Gilligan's dialogue. And also in this room, I think this is the first mimic we come across, and I kind of hit it by accident, which makes it kind of angry. But mimics in this game are different to the ones in Dark Souls 1. Not in many respects, just the fact that they have a different action pose. They stand in a different way when they're about to attack you. These ones hunch over backwards, rather than standing up. And each mimic in this game drops a piece of the Dark set, which is an armor set from Dark Souls 1, from the Dark Wraith Covenant. If you don't know what the Dark Wraiths are, to sum up, in Dark Souls 1 they were a covenant obsessed with humanity and the dark, obviously, judging from the name, and their leader, Karth, or Kaith, whichever way you want to pronounce it, was obsessed with trying to find a way to bring upon the Age of Man, or the Age of Dark. Both primordial serpents in Dark Souls 1, Karth and Frampt, pushed the chosen undead to do one of two things: ignite the flame, or rather, reignite the flame, or let it fade. And these choices lead to the endings for Dark Souls 1. There are quite similar themes at play in Dark Souls 2 as well. The Emerald Herald pushes us to find the king and reignite the flame, whereas Nashandra wants to let the flame fade so that she can usher in an age of abyss and dark. We're also about to get up to Mytha's boss fight here, so we're going to kind of retract a little bit back to Gilligan's dialogue once again and talk about Mytha and the Old Iron King, and that will lead into her boss fight. So, Gilligan states that Mytha was once married, or at least wed to be married to the Old Iron King, and the old Iron King did not feel the same about her because he had feelings for another. And because of this, Mytha's ire, or rather anger, drove her to poison herself in the name of beauty. Mytha felt that she was not enough for her king, so she tried to make herself even more beautiful to get his attention. It's unclear if Mytha created the poison that seeps into Harvest Valley, or if the poison was already there and Mytha just used it to become the monster that she is now. Sometime after the incident with Mytha, the Iron King ended up vanishing. Now, when we get to the Iron Keep, we will learn that he became something known as Icarus Earth. We'll talk about this more when we get to the Iron Keep, but the basic premise behind Icarus Earth is that it became a vessel for one of the Great Souls. So the Iron King had possession of one of the Great Souls, and upon falling into the lava or something along those lines, he ended up creating basically a container for that soul, a catalyst that created the old Iron King boss, or what he is known as today, which is a giant, hideous monster himself. Which is kind of ironic now that I think about it. He kind of left Mytha to be infatuated with him, even though he knew that, and he loved someone else, and Mytha turned into a monster to get his attention, or to try and become more beautiful herself. And then because of the Iron King's own greed, he ended up becoming a monster himself. It's actually still quite unclear who the old Iron King's lost love was, because it's never explained in the game or even discussed, but there are a few theories that it may be the Lost Sinner. This is a theory because of the story of Alkin and Ven. Alkin and Ven are both possibly Belfry Luna and Belfry Sol. Belfry Sol resides within the Iron Keep, which is where the Iron King resides, and Belfry Luna is in the Lost Bastille, near where the Lost Sinner resides. You might also be thinking that his lost love could have been Nadalia, the Bride of Ash, a child of Manus that is present in the Iron King DLC, but in fact her lore states that she came to the Iron King's land after he was already gone and had become Icarus Earth. Therefore, Nadalia could not have been the one that the Iron King had feelings for, thus leaving us to think of candidates who the Iron King could have been married to other than Mytha and Nadalia. The only locations we know of that had to do with the old Iron King's time are Broom Tower, the Iron Keep, the Earthen Peak, and Harvest Valley. I suppose it doesn't matter too much who the Iron King had feelings for over Mytha, but I think it would have been pretty cool if they would have added that little lore tidbit in with Scholar of the First Sin, and just cleared up a lot of the vagueness surrounding that fact. Although, I suppose, if it wasn't that important they wouldn't have added it, which they have not, so I don't think we should worry too much about who it was. Anyway, as you can see, Mytha's boss fight is a walk in the park if you burn that windmill. If you didn't burn it, there would be poison all over where I'm standing right now, and I would be getting poisoned constantly. But there we have it, Mytha is defeated and we will get her soul to read, even though we've already gone over her backstory to death. Soul of Mytha, the baneful queen who lives in the Earthen Peak. The queen sought the king's affection, even poisoning herself to attain beauty, despite the monstrous consequences, all those for the compelling madness known as love. So, there we have it. That is the story of Mytha and the old Iron King. And also the Covetous Demon, but who really cares about him? And also, if you're wondering how you take an elevator out of the Earthen Peak to the Iron Keep, I don't know either, because it doesn't make sense geographically. I realize the Iron Peak is behind the Earthen Peak, but we are basically near the top of it in Mytha's boss room, and then we're taking an elevator even further up and out, like the magic elevator from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, to the Iron Keep. It is possible that Mytha's boss room may not have been as high up as assumed, but it looked like we were actually going pretty far up in the Earthen Peak, because, I mean, we did go up like 3 or 4 ladders, and then a flight of stairs as well, and now an elevator, so it must have been pretty high. Anyways, here we are at the Iron Keep. Now, obviously, this is where we will get our next Great Soul, but first I am going to teleport over to the Lost Bastille, and we are going to get Strayed out of his predicament that he is in. This part was meant to be at the start of the episode, but I decided we'd just carry on from where we left last time anyway, so we'll just get Strayed out of the petrification that he's in right now instead. And I almost fucked up real bad there, because that could have alerted everything in the room and I would have died. So when we unpetrify Strayed, he will give us some of the most interesting dialogue in the game, arguably. Basically, he will give us dialogue on pretty much everything that we have come to question so far, and he will explain at least some of it. Now, his name is Strayed of Olafus. Olafus was one of the kingdoms that was here before Drang Lake, and seemingly Strayed has been here for ages long past, petrified, and we're now freeing him to have a little chat. So I'll let his dialogue play out. It might take a little while.
Still a bit stiff, I'm afraid. I must thank you, young traveler. I am Strayed, a wandering sorcerer of sorts. I've been a guest for a very long time, but I don't think that anybody will miss me. Very good. Very good indeed. Cursed one, weak you may be, but I, Strayed, will teach you my spells. Oh, how long was I sat petrified? Long enough for the old kingdom to have crumbled, I see. Why didn't anyone wake me sooner? Drang Lake. I've never heard the name. Is that what they call this place now? Very good. Very good indeed. The Cursed Ones were imprisoned within this land. Of course, you came of your own free will. The people fear the Cursed Ones like a plague. Some people would rather keep dreadful things out of sight, out of mind. In the end, they swept them up and corralled them here. So very typical of meek minds, don't you think? Once people became aware of their own frailty, they seized anybody they found undesirable, cursed or no, and impounded them here. Whoever posed even the slightest threat was removed, all so that they could sleep better at night. They even turned the great Strayed into a stone. Many kingdoms rose and fell on this tract of earth. Mine was by no means the first. Anything that has a beginning also has an end. No flame, however brilliant, does not one day splutter and fade. But then, from the ashes, the flame reignites, and a new kingdom is born, sporting a new face. It is all a curse. And it is your cursed flesh that will inherit the flame. Pyromancy was created by the ancient witch of fire. She harnessed the power of flame and melded it into pyromancy. The witch led her daughters into war against the Old Ones. But legends are legends. What are you prepared to believe?
Okay, so not only does Strayed reiterate what I said earlier in the episode about how when the flame sputters and fades, it is reignited and the kingdom sports a new face. So you could say that when the flame burnt out in Dark Souls 1, or was reignited even, then the land of Lordran was no more, and it became a new kingdom altogether because a new cycle had begun. Strayed states that exactly in his dialogue there. Well, not exactly, he doesn't bring up Lordran or anything like that, but he does say that when the flame fades or is reignited, that a new kingdom will be born. So each time the cycle repeats, a new kingdom is born. Strayed also talks of the Old Ones, the Stone Dragons, and the Ancient Witch of Fire, who led her daughters into battle to fight the Old Ones. And if you will remember, the witch that he speaks of is the Witch of Izalith from Dark Souls 1. These are the legends of Lordran that he is speaking of. Now, it must be that Strayed is so old that he knows of these legends, whereas people in Drangleic now know none of them. There is only one other mention of a legend in this game about Seath in Brightstone Cove, but they always reference him as the Old Pale One. If Strayed's dialogue doesn't solidify at least some belief in you that this land could be Lordran, then I honestly don't know what else I can do to try and prove that to you. But once again, I do sit on the fence on this matter, so it's not really an issue for me whether it's true or false. I just like to believe that the game doesn't inherently make us believe that this is Lordran for no reason at all. Anyway, I'm just going to transition here to when I'm at the bonfire, because it's time to end this episode, sadly. I'm looking at all the items here just to look at any lore I may have missed, but I've pretty much clarified everything in them anyway, so there's no reason to actually stick around talking to Strayed any longer. I also do know there's something quite interesting when I'm sitting at the bonfire as well. Apparently I can nullify the effect of a human effigy on this bonfire for some reason, and I don't know why, because I never used a human effigy on this bonfire, and it says that I have apparently. The effect of using a human effigy on a bonfire or burning one in it is to nullify PvP and online play in this area, but I don't know why that is the case here. Anyway, next time we're going to go into the Iron Keep and get to talking about some new interesting lore. So, thanks for watching guys, see you next time.